Thanks everybody for tuning in for another exhilarating episode of Dark Bites. And I'm going to make it extra exhilarating today because I am here with the author, filmmaker. You've got so many accolades, I don't even know where to begin. Film festival, director, founder, and the guy that they often hail as the hardest working filmmaker in Buffalo. And thanks to you, I was able to come down a few weeks ago and actually see that in action for myself. Of course, we're talking about Frenzy Moon. Not the Frenzy Moon, like I've screwed up and said a couple times, but just Frenzy Moon. Is there a reason for that, by the way, Greg, that you didn't put the Frenzy Moon? I take it there's a specific reason for that.
I am distinguishing between the book mythology and the movie mythology because they're two different things. Also, in the land of film distribution, streaming, there's a lot of pressure on filmmakers to have titles that start with a letter earlier in the alphabet. And F comes well before T, even though under proper alphabetical methodology, you would skip the and go to F anyways. But Frenzy Moon is more desirable than the Frenzy Moon.
Agree.
Most of my films have been two-word titles, so I like that.
Yeah, no, it fits. It's nice and punchy, just like the film is.
The attribution you just gave me, the exact quote was the hardest working man in horror, not in Buffalo.
Oh.
It covers a much broader canvas than just Little Buffalo, which has a couple 100,000 people in it. However, that quote was also a decade ago. I haven't been the busiest in a while.
Gotcha. Well, you've been in other things too. And I mean, like you said, you went ahead on, weren't busy enough, I guess, and you decided to kick off, what is it? I think the 10th year now. I know it's had some name iterations, but with your film festival that you do in Buffalo.
It was 3 years as Buffalo Screams, 10 years as Buffalo Dreams, and now 1 year as Amazing Fantasy Fest. So we're coming up on year 15.
Damn.
That's 15 years as a festival director, 20 years as a published author, and 40 years working in independent film. This is my 40th year.
I think I've covered 5 of your films if you count the Johnny Gruesome music video that you did, and of course the film itself. But this was my first time actually being on set, so you feel me as far as how busy you are. But I want to talk about the origin of this thing, because as you said, it all started with this book here. If I can get that pesky glare out of the way, I knew I should have gone for natural light. So much for being natural. Mm-hmm. Of course, The Frenzy Way. And I know there's been some of your films, such as Johnny Gruesome, which I actually have, right here beside me as well. He always keeps me company. Johnny. Here's Johnny. Thanks to Monster Matt Patterson for rocking out that mask. But with Johnny Gruesome, I know we started off as a script that you wrote, I believe, and I know you'll correct me if I'm wrong, shortly after you did your first film at the ripe old age of 19, Slime City, way back in the day. But of course, they were willing to give a kid, I guess, a few $1 million to make Johnny Gruesome, so you ended up turning that into it all. But when it comes to Frenzy Moon, I believe that became a script after your trilogy of Frenzy Way werewolf novels?
Yeah,
is that correct?
Quite a few years later.
Oh, okay.
I wrote the screenplay that became The Frenzy Way back in 1986 or 1987, right after I wrote Slime City.
Okay.
And a few of the scripts, like Personal Demons, it stood around for a few years until I turned it into a novel. The only reason I turned it into a novel is that when I pitched, Medallion had already acquired Johnny Gruesome, and when I pitched Personal Demons to them, Jake Hellman, they said, we hear werewolves are going to be really big. I said, I got one of those too. You put out Personal Demons, and by the time that's out, I'll be done with this one. And then it became a second book, and then finally a trilogy. And, a lot of people like the werewolf novels more than they like the Jake Hellman novels, which surprises me because Jake Hellman is really my passion in literary form. I only started writing books because I wanted to write that series. I love monsters, not specifically werewolves, but all monsters. I've wanted to do a monster movie. I wanted to do a werewolf movie, but I could never do the Frenzy novels because they would be huge. $80 million movies. Those books are big action set pieces in New York City with cops versus good werewolves and bad werewolves. And I could never raise that kind of money. And if I attempted to do those books on a micro budget, it would be a disaster.
Right.
So I stepped away from the mythology of those books, and I just started from scratch and created a film that was number one, a cabin in the woods movie. So it would be one location. Number two, it was like The Thing, a bunch of characters who become paranoid that one of them might be a werewolf. And, it went from there. I actually wrote that script prior. I wanted to shoot that after Johnny Gruesome. And by then I already had a working relationship with Craig Sheffer because he had optioned my zombie novella, Carnage Road.
Yeah.
And I wrote this script with him in mind. And he loved it. And Johnny Gruesome didn't do that well financially, so I didn't know how I was going to raise a similar budget for the Werewolf movie. And then Widow's Point came along. I said, okay, I'll do Widow's Point, and then I'll do Frenzy Moon, which was the Frenzy Moon at the time.
Sure.
And then the pandemic hit. And there was no way I could shoot a cabin in the woods movie with 7 main actors, a crew, plus a practical effects crew safely during COVID. And that's what led to me digging the Guns of Eden action script out of the drawer and shooting that, because 90% of it was outside. And after Guns of Eden, I felt like I was at the top of my game. I'm like, okay, I'm ready to do this werewolf movie. So I went to a friend of mine who has a lot of wealthy friends. I said, I want you to executive produce this movie. Go raise $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 so I can do this big budget, for me, big budget werewolf movie that Craig Sheffer will star in. And, gave him a little over a year and he struck out. He couldn't raise any money. And all the people that he knew were too leery of investing in a movie. They were all worried about the economy. Oh, it looks good, but it might collapse. We don't trust Joe Biden. Joe Biden's sending all his IRS agents after our money. We got to clutch onto it like pearls. Couldn't do it.
Yeah.
My chief failing as a filmmaker has always been that I've never had a producing partner who can go out and raise the money for me. I always have to chase the money for me. I want somebody who can, number one, raise more money than I could ever raise, and number two, raise that money and allow me to concentrate on the creative stuff. It's never like that. I have to be the principal person chasing the money. It took me a while to say, I had to get into the proper frame of mind to crowdfund again. I didn't want to do it, but I really wanted to make this movie. So I had to give myself a couple of months to get there before I said, okay, I have no choice. I'm going to have to, if I want to make this movie at all, I'm going to have to crowdfund it and make it for $100,000 instead of $500,000.
Yeah, and you go all in with the crowdfunding too. You don't just post up a thing and that's it. You're doing it all day. You're doing various posts. You're on top of everything, which is why you get the funding.
It's the only way it works. If you work and hound people, and it's a lot of work, which is why I had to get myself into that mindset. But am I going to sit on my ass for another year or two waiting for the magic money to come in, which may never happen?
Right.
Or am I going to be proactive and go after it? So that's what I did.
There you go. So you still are the hardest working man in horror.
Well,
what do you need to be?
Filmmakers who are able to make a movie every year or a movie every 2 years are harder working than me, but I give it my best.
Yeah, I think you do all right. And I was curious too. So I think you might have answered the question a little bit, because it's hard enough to do all the crowdfunding and get everybody on board to support one werewolf movie. But did you? And I know that your film was kind of amalgamation of the 3 books as well. But did you ever consider maybe splitting that up into either shorter films to accompany each of the books, or make it make it the next franchise?
It just wouldn't work on this kind of budget. I'm telling you, $80 million minimum, a big cast, a big crew, shooting in New York City, Union, shooting for 2 months instead of 3 weeks. Those books, the content is so big that it wouldn't matter if it was this section of the book or that. It could not be done without a major producer and a major director. They'd never let me direct. Even if they wanted the content, they wouldn't let me direct something that big. It could never happen. It could not be done by an independent filmmaker.
Gotcha. Well, thank goodness you did this, but I can only imagine it must have been a lot like killing maybe some of your darlings? Although, I mean, you certainly had them. They certainly live on in your books, but what was the process like for you trying to drill it down and taking these three massive books?
So I'm going to say it again. The movie is unrelated to the books. They're both werewolf stories. They both have frenzy in the title because I wanted to make that acknowledgement to my readers.
Sure.
But they are unrelated. There's no continuity between them. There's no mythology between them. There's no effort to boil what's in the books down to this. This is a much simpler concept, easier to execute. No sacrifices involved. The books are out there. Maybe it'll draw interest in somebody who will want to make those big movies or a TV series. Who knows? But they are completely unrelated.
Gotcha. The books are the books. The movie's the movie.
Correct.
Cool. And when you're writing the script too, because I know a lot of times you'll end up writing scripts, but obviously not the one necessarily the wrote for Johnny Gruesome way back in the day. But did you happen to write this script with specific people in mind that you wanted?
No. Well, I mean, I had Craig Sheffer in mind for the lead. But what happened is when I wrote that, Screen Actors Guild used to have a contract that allowed independent filmmakers to cast a union actor and surround them with non-union actors. And that's what I did on Widow's Point. They changed those contracts. It's not possible anymore. For me to have Craig involved, the entire cast would have to be SAG, and I would need 3 times the budget that I had for this entire film just to pay for the cast. So that became an impossibility.
Gotcha. So that's frustrating, but at the same time, it clearly worked out really well. And the one thing I found fast, sorry, go ahead.
We're talking about 8 years, too, that it took to get this thing going. And if I had committed to casting any locals, they'd be too old by the time I finally got the funding, you know?
Right.
I did Widow's Point and Guns of Eden before I got to this film.
Gotcha. Yeah, and of course, with everything, you're very specific of exactly what you want. I know. Thanks for sending the script over, and I could see even in the, the planning portion of the script, you had exactly what the type of people that you wanted, what the look was, what the rage was. One of the commonalities I thought was really cool when I got chatting with some of the people on the set, at least that were there for the last 2 days of filming, was the fact that they all had theater backgrounds. So it seemed like you did that intentionally. It wasn't just accident that they all these, the 6 core cast members that you had all had a theater background. Why did you do that specifically? I know each of the actors that I spoke to had their take on why they were likely chosen for that and what the differences were, but why was that important to you?
Because it is a single location film. There are dramatic scenes that run 6, 7, 8, almost 9 pages long. Standard in a movie is 3 pages, unless it's a big dramatic confrontation with a lot of characters.
Right.
You need people who can handle that type of dialogue, that burden. And, the first thing actors who work primarily in films say is, do we have to be able to do it straight through, or are we going to do it in sections? So, you got to do it straight through. You got to do the whole scene. Theater actors can do that. Movie actors can't, in general.
Right.
I mean, they can. It's just out of their comfort zone. Also, I actually believe that theater actors are better than people who just jump into movies without having a theater background. I honestly believe that. I think there's more training involved. Somebody who's been in a theater production and several theater productions, I know they're going to be able to do what I need from them.
Right.
I took the casting in this script very seriously. I cast most of these people for the teaser trailer I did 8 months ago. I did a teaser trailer for the crowdfunding campaign.
Yeah. That was a great little trailer.
I changed 2 of the actors. One of them was never going to be in the feature version. I could not find a Hispanic actor. I just asked a filmmaker guy I knew, will you play the part just for this purpose? And then the other one just wasn't available. He had a job managing a supermarket that interfered with his schedule, so he had to turn down working in a feature film.
Oh, gee.
I cannot understand the logic of that, the motivation.
That sounds like a career choice decision, not so much. I guess filmmaking isn't for that person.
I think you have to be willing to leap into things with both feet, which is what I did. I mean, I quit a theater management job.
Mm-hmm.
I was a teenage zombie back in 1984, the first film I worked on.
Yeah.
And I recommend that people do that. And this wasn't even a volunteer job. I was paying people, not a lot of money, but a couple $100 a day.
Sure.
So he should have at least tried to get out of it, I think.
Yeah, 100%.
Anyways,
Well,
I did. I went to a lot of theater shows during, post-pandemic, and every time I would say, "Oh, maybe that person would be good for this. Maybe that person would be good for that." Aaron, who took the role I wrote for Craig Sheffer and did an amazing job, and people are going to comment on his performance when the film comes out. I mean, they're going to remember him for this work that he did. I've known him for a while. He had a small part in Guns of Eden, but I saw him in a play with Jacob Applegate, who plays Mark. So two of these guys played robots in a science fiction play. I saw him. And right then I was thinking both of them for these parts.
Yeah.
And Gabrielle Nunzio, Elle, who plays Sheila, sort of vampy character. She had worked on a film that I produced called Unbelievable. So, I mean, she was good and easy to work with. Alyssa, somebody that I observed on set of somebody else's film. I took some students to visit a film, and we watched them shoot. And my daughter, Kaylin, actually is in a scene with Alyssa in Slasher Days this summer.
Oh, that's cool. I was going to ask if it was that movie.
So Alyssa's like one of the two people who I hadn't seen in a theater production, but I was able to observe her on set and see right away that she was easygoing and professional. Yeah. I checked with Kristen Skeet, the director of that. I said, is she good to work with? And she confirmed that. So that was easy to do. The hardest of those roles to cast was Kayla Walker, who is the African-American female in the cast. There's a couple of African-Americans. And when I did a casting call for the teaser, I wasn't paying anybody. And very few African-American actresses responded. None of them looked like I pictured the character as. Yeah. And Alyssa actually recommended Kayla, who was in Jamestown, which is 2 hours away from here. So I had to bring her out here and put her up for an hotel for the night.
Yeah.
And she was perfect. She looked like I imagined the characters. She was easy to work with. She was great in the role. And so at that point, I could have saved myself some money probably, because if I had done a casting call for the feature for a paying gig, I would have gotten a lot more responses. But in my mind, she was the character and she had to have the part. So the rest of them have performed in theater productions together, and only a couple of them have performed with her in the past. But for the most part, this was a core unit of people that already had chemistry and relationships and shorthand knowledge, and it's very hard to get.
Yeah, 100%. The cool thing about that is that you can really tell that they really were a pack, because in between the scenes, there wasn't any, going off of their own corner kind of thing and staring at the phones or whatever. There was obviously chemistry, a lot of good, camaraderie amongst them. I think the only one that really kept to himself when he did that on purpose was Aaron. I had a chance to talk with him, and I was a little reluctant to approach him at first because I thought, this guy doesn't really seem like he just is a big fan of people and conversations. So, I took him out to, I was a little bit nervous because, I think you were shooting some stuff inside at the time of the cabin. So we went out and found a quiet spot outside, and I'm like, is this guy going to lead me off into the woods? He just has that kind of edge to him, and he couldn't have been a more, warm, sweethearted guy. And he was talking that his character was very much like that. Was a bit of a loner, and I mean, he's sort of the odd man out within the film, and he was portraying that as well. He's like, yeah, you'll notice that between shoots, he's like, it's not that I don't like all the people I'm working with, but this is kind of what I'm all about, my character, and that really blew me away with their everybody's dedication. I wouldn't have. I think if anybody walked in there, you think it was some sort of big blockbuster film that was going on, because if everybody was just absolutely locked in. I mean, there's a few times with Alyssa that you mentioned that you saw her first perform on set of Slasher Days of Summer, where she would be preparing for a scene, and I had no idea that's what she was doing, but she's by herself on a couch, tears are just down her face, she looks absolutely miserable, and I walked over, I was like, everything good? And she, oh yeah, it's great, big smile, I'm just getting ready for my part. And do you find that that's a lot of what it is for theater actors as well, that they just, because when it's go time, they don't have the luxury of various takes outside of rehearsal, once it's go time, they have to do and get it right. Do you find that was maybe one of the benefits, that they just were able to lock into that frame of mind very quickly, as opposed to an actor that might need a few takes to warm up and get into it?
Well, first of all, they all have their own methods, which they get from studying acting, whether it's theater or film. Most of them have theater experience. I never asked each one individually, what is your method? What's your technique? Just figure it out shooting.
Sure.
Second of all, when I shot my first 2 films on 16 millimeter films, it really was just a couple of takes. We couldn't afford to shoot more.
Right.
It wasn't, is it good enough? It was, did it sound like English? And if so, let's move on.
Yeah.
Very different on this film. I mean, there are some things we did 14, 15 takes on.
Yeah.
For me, the dynamics of the actors was more important than the threat they faced, the werewolf, even though the werewolves are how we'll market this, and they'll be the key thing that horror fans want. But for me, it was dealing with the drama and the performances of these characters. And we fell behind schedule constantly because I wasn't willing to take shortcuts on the performances. I wanted to make sure each actor got to do what they wanted to do. And if they asked for another take, they get it. Or I'd say no. And then later on, I'd say, you know what, let's go back and get that other take.
Yeah.
And it was the performances. It was also the lighting, the camera work. We had a lot of dolly shots, moving shots, which take time. And I try to look at every film like it could be my last one. Now I'm getting older, so if it was the last one,
fingers crossed, it's not.
I want this to be at a whole other level than what I've done. And I was willing to let myself fall behind in a way I wasn't willing to do on Guns of Eden. Guns of Eden, I was always combining shots and scenes in the last 3 hours a day and finding all sorts of creative ways to make our day. That's the term for getting everything that's on the schedule. On this film, every day we were pushing stuff off till the next day or the day after. And eventually we had to add an extra day in the schedule. But the actors certainly had ample time to get things right in the number of takes we did.
Yeah, and they absolutely stole it too. And I could definitely see where you're coming from as far as the performance has to sell. And I think that's the way it is for any, at least memorable film. I mean, I watched, one of my favorite werewolf movies, which, might have to take a back seat once this one comes out, and I'll talk to you about when that might be later on. But I watched, American Werewolf of London, and it's certainly revealed as one of the best transformations in cinema history. It's my personal favorite, but that it would have been nothing more than maybe a YouTube highlight if it wasn't for all the extra drama and the, real life emotions that were portrayed in there that really captured you. And I think you nailed it, or your cast nailed it in the set, because even while I'm watching this taking place and I can see all the cameras, I can see the cameraman right up close. I can see the sound guy, and I'm watching you in that. But when the actors were performing, all that stuff just kind of disappeared. I'm just locked into exactly what they were doing, whether it was the last scene or it was the one for safety or whatnot. It seemed like everything else just kind of dissipated. It was all locked in on what their performance was. So I cannot wait to see that on the actual screen, and when it's actually ready for everybody to consume.
So I'll tell you, Rick, most of my horror films have a very goofy edge to them. They're campy, they're horror comedies, a lot of them.
Sure.
I haven't ever tried to do a scary, straight horror film. Even Johnny Gruesome has its 80s throwback vibes, sense of humor, even though a lot of it's played more straight. This one's different. It's 100% straight. We want it to be dramatically involving. We want it to be scary. We want it to be suspenseful. All of that hinges on the performances of the actors. You have to believe that they're scared. And I took this cast very seriously. And I told you I cast many of them 8 months ago, but I had the full cast locked in 3 months before shooting. I've never had a complete cast locked in 3 months before shooting. None of them changed. They were all excited for the project. And we got to do a rehearsal, 2 days of rehearsals, although the first day was really just doing a script reading and checking out costumes and stuff. 1 day of complete rehearsal really watching them work scenes together. And I've never had that before, because generally speaking, and this is the way most movies are, you have this actor for this set period of time, this actor for this set period of time. Maybe they overlap for a weekend. Then another actor comes in for a few days, and then you have locals. You never have the full cast at your disposal to just work stuff out, just you and them. And because I had most of them on for most of the shoot, I did have them all on. So we were able to get together, and I think it really made a difference. One of them, Steven, hadn't done much film work before.
Yeah.
And he said, oh, wow, this feels like, when we got on set, this feels like real acting, like we had to throw away everything that we worked in rehearsal. But I'm glad we did that rehearsal. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's part of what real filmmaking is. And I don't always get the chance to do that. I'm so confined by budget and scheduling that I made it a priority on this one, and it really worked out. They are all excellent. There's not a weak performance in the bunch, and couldn't be happier with what they've done.
Yeah, and I think it speaks a lot too as well that you were so locked in on knowing exactly what was expected of everybody and making sure that everybody knew exactly what was expected of them. I mean, even watching, and I had no idea that Steven was that green of an actor, because I didn't get that impression from watching
Theater.
Pardon me?
He's done theater, but he's only done small roles on film.
Okay.
You know, come on a day or two, you don't get the whole picture, like when you're there for almost the whole thing.
Yeah, and it was really neat because I know there's one scene in particular that he was doing that it took several scenes, but he was so willing, and you could tell he was making little adjustments each and every time until he got it absolutely right. And it was really neat to literally see him grow and evolve within a specific scene.
I really liked working with him, and expect to be friends afterwards.
Yeah,
I don't really have close relationships with any of them. Aaron had been in the one film together, and Gabrielle had been on Unbelievable, but this is really the first time that we've spent quality time. And I told them at rehearsal, I said, you're free to, make the dialogue sound easier for you if you wish. And I want you all to realize that this is a chance where you can create your characters. I'm not asking you to please me, please yourselves first. And then if I have to say something, I will. So it's not often that actors get that type of freedom. And it's kind of, this is one of the only times I've ever had a script supervisor. The reason I need a script supervisor on this film is because there are 7 characters in a scene, all doing dialogue. And if they forget a line, I need someone to come in right away with that line. There's also continuity needs to be solved, but the script supervisor doesn't know that I've given them freedom to deviate from what's on the page. So it becomes a harder job for the script supervisor then.
right. And I'm sure it'll make it a little bit easier in editing too. I had a chance, I think your script supervisor, Kim, she's one of the first people I had a chance to chat with, and was showing me the binder that she had, and everything is absolutely dialed down to this is a good scene, this is this scene, to the point where I'm, excuse me, I'm sure that'll be a dream come true in the editing process, or at least make it a lot easier, where you already have a storyboard of all the scripts or all the scenes that work perfectly. So if you need to find something to splice and put things and stitch things together to make it seamless, then I'm sure that'll only make things a lot easier for you in the end.
Easier for the editors, perhaps, not easier for me. I had the same editor for 25, 26 years, Phil Gallo, who edited all of my features other than the first 2. He came in on my 3rd one, and he's edited them for years. And we've had a shorthand. We've never needed those kind of notes. We just synced everything up, and I've watched every single take. And sometimes a take that you're not going to use has a little moment that's better than a take you do use. So it's always important for me to watch all those takes. It's a little different circumstance on this film because, number one, Phil's having health issues, so he wasn't able to edit the film, which was a real blow to me. It's a big shakeup in the way I'm used to doing things. Yeah. My friend Joe Fusco, who was the assistant editor on all those films, that means syncing up the dialogue and making them presentable so we can watch the takes. He's going to edit half the film, and Aaron is going to edit the second half. And there's a point at the script where things change so dramatically that it's fine to have 2 different editors through those 2 halves. But for them, both of them, since I'm not going to have time to go through all the takes, it will help things a lot for them to know what we thought the best takes were on the day. That doesn't mean we're not going to have to go back and look through all the other takes to find little bits here.
Right.
It's always bound to happen.
Yeah, that's interesting with that Aaron, because I know he mentioned he's going to do some of the editing, and that's interesting that he's going to edit a very specific portion of the film. Maybe this is a better question to ask him, but as you're talking about that, I'm really fascinated by that you have somebody that, played a pretty pivotal role in the film who's going to be editing that, because do you think that'll make his job easier? Have you had that experience where you've had actors play a hand in the editing process as well? Because it's got to be so tough to sort of separate.
The entire second half of the film will be conveyed through one tight close-up on his face.
No, yeah, listen.
I could see that working.
An actor, he's a screenwriter. He's edited other features. I was looking for somebody local to do the second half of the film. I knew I could trust Joe on the first half, and he volunteered. And I remember thinking that I watched his Rust Belt Driller Killer, whatever it was at the time. And wow, the editing is really good on this film. So to me, that was a good arrangement, because I would rather pay somebody who has already put blood, sweat, and tears into the film than somebody who hasn't.
Gotcha, that makes sense. And he'll said
no, I've never had actors involved in editing. I don't even like showing them the cuts. I showed Anthony a cut of Johnny Gruesome, and he sent it back to me and said, "Hey, I love editing, so I did a re-edit of the film for you." Okay, what am I supposed to do with that? I wouldn't even watch it, because Phil and I had worked on our edit.
Yeah.
So no, you don't want to involve actors in editing.
Yeah, it almost seems like inviting the customers in from a restaurant and say, "Hey, why don't you come in and cook the next meal?"
But it was odd. He was enthusiastic for the film. I get it. But normally it's just me and my editor, and I'll show stuff to Tamar, and she'll give me comments. And I'll show stuff to Chris Cosgrave, my cinematographer, who also does graphics and visual effects. And it was quite honestly an amazing editor. And I would have loved for him to have edited the second half of the film, but he's got other commitments, and we have a hard deadline from the distributor. So having two different editors go at it was a big help ultimately.
Well, and I definitely want to ask you about the hard, what the distributor and what that deadline might be and what that will look like for release a little bit later. But one of the neat things too is that I found that even when I was there, you sure that was your almost final 2 days. I think you did some extra stuff with the skeleton crew just last week. I believe you finished.
We finished Friday, which means 3 a.m. Saturday.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. And the neat thing is, I think, of course, in most of the films, I don't think it matters on the budget. Most films are shot not in sequential order of when they're going to be shown in the actual final product of it. But when you've got such a tight space, I think you usually try to get most of your stuff wrapped up in about 15 days. How do you decide what gets filmed when, especially when you've got the freedom of you're shooting at nighttime? It's a pretty controlled environment, so you could probably get away with it more, I would think, by shooting whatever order you wanted to shoot them in and have everything kind of look the same. But how do you decide how things get split up and what order you film things in? Is it just availability, or?
18 days is my preference. 18 days is what I shot a few of my earlier films on.
Yeah.
18 days is not realistic for an independent film these days. The technology has made things go a lot faster in theory.
Mm-hmm.
Films are designed in such a way with fewer locations so that they can be shot faster. A lot of the ones I've worked on for Fred Olin Ray and Chris Ray were 13 days, 15 days for an action film. That's why I did 15 days for Guns of Eden, and I really needed an extra day on that.
Yeah.
So on the bigger budget, I wanted 15 days for this film plus a day just for special effects inserts. When the budget got tightened up, I scheduled it for 13 days. I knew that 13 days wasn't going to work. Right. I knew that was being optimistic. So we ended up adding a 14th day in the middle of the shoot, near the end of the shoot. And then we weren't able to finish on our final day. We still had this whole sequence with Alyssa in the outhouse that we had to postpone a week. And then something else postponed that another week. So we ultimately shot 15 and a half days, and we've got at least a full day of special effects stuff coming up. But we've wrapped principal photography. In terms of scheduling, I made the unusual decision that because I would have the actors, I would have the location, of shooting it more or less in sequence. And then when a character got killed, that actor was out of here, and hopefully I would have
Right.
It was a great plan. It would have been fun. It would have been interesting, but there was a matter of the special effects. And the special effects guys are from Rochester, which is an hour away from here, Buffalo, and I'd have to bring them out and put them up. And they wanted me to combine stuff so that they'd only have to say a certain number of days, married guys, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So immediately I had to start changing that up. So it was sort of in sequence with certain exceptions. Then when I added the day, that was to pick up stuff that we had pushed off and hadn't been able to get. So slowly the schedule mutates, and this always happens. You have the schedule you start with, and then this location falls through, this actor gets sick, whatever. You have to start changing, and it becomes sort of panic time. I'm very good at scheduling. It's a talent of mine I really have. As it turned out, I did kill the characters off in a certain sequence, but I knew I was going to have to bring them back for a final, so they were all back for the last regular day of principal photography, aside from the day just spent with Alyssa in Outhouse. And I had always planned for that to be a one-day shoot with no other cast, just dealing with her so she could get really worked up and terrified, because in that scene she's trapped in an outhouse and there's a werewolf outside that we don't see. So it's ultimately good that we didn't try and squeeze that into the last day, which would never have worked. And when I realized on that last day that we were going to have to push something, people were giving me different suggestions. I said, no, this is what we have to do. So we did wrap out of that location. We broke down that outhouse with the removable walls, and it was big, 6x6.
That was a huge outhouse. I wish I had a house like that when I was camping.
Transported it to Keith's house, where we had to rebuild it, assemble it. Very cold the night we shot it, and Alyssa did great, and principal wrapped well.
Perfect. Well, I mean, I feel kind of selfish in thanking you for having those extra couple of days, because I probably never would have got a chance to get out there. And I guess the next question too that, you obviously touched on a bit was the complications regarding special effects that were practical effects that you had. So it was really cool that I had an opportunity to sort of see a lot of that kind of go down on. I think you said that was the longest day that you've shot since a day in Slime City. Was about, what, a 15-hour day, 15.5 hour?
And by the time you wrap and everything, it's about 16 hours. And that's normal on big budget movies. And nobody complains about the long days because they're union crew members getting time and a half and double time, and they make a killing.
They come from the meadow.
And independent films, there isn't any overtime. We only have so much money to spend.
Yeah.
I knew it was going to be a long, grueling day, and it was.
Yeah. Yeah.
Next, they take a long time. They don't work the way you want them to. Things break, and they have to take them in and perform surgery on them, and it's just the way it's done. And quite honestly, I will take some of the blame, because trying to do a special effects movie in 13 days was just ridiculous. It was insane. There was no way it was going to happen. 15 days, a little more realistic. Still, we always knew there were going to be certain inserts that would have to be shot separately to complete the picture.
Gotcha. And it was, and I think this is a big deal for you too, because there's no, I mean, just like you fooled us with the helicopter and Guns of Eden, at least you fooled me anyways, that you didn't blow your budget on this big giant military helicopter. I think this is really going to add a lot of extra, reality, I think, in the film too, by having those practical effects, because you really can tell, when it's more digitally inserted as opposed to practical. So,
first of all, I've never had the budget to do CGI monsters. I've never wanted to do CGI monsters. This is what I grew up with. This is what I made. I think in the werewolf genre especially, I think the fans want practical effects werewolves. We all remember American Werewolf and the Howling. That's what most people want. Sometimes you want some CGI enhancement. Maybe there's an aspect of the werewolf you can't do practically. But it was always the plan. It was a selling point. It's how I marketed the film in the crowdfunding campaign. And it was always important to me to have a practical effects werewolf playing many werewolves.
Right. Yeah, and I'm really glad that you did end up going with that as well. And it was kind of neat too because we were kind of talking about some of the props or the practical of Werewolf would break down, and you'd have to do some surgery on that. And I thought it kind of reminded me. Luckily, you didn't have to do any on the spot surgery for any of the any of the actors, despite some of the parts being quite physical. But I was really impressed too that everything was down to a fine tuned machine, because even with safety, I know that was a super important thing too. It's always been important to all of your films. And geez, I know you had one of your ADs, Hope, who was just incredible. She was super on the ball, and I think at one point somebody got Alyssa got like a tiny scratch from a werewolf tooth. Apparently, wolves have sharp teeth, and it barely broke the skin. But boom, she was on there immediately. She's swabbing it with alcohol. She's getting it all bandaged up, and and on with the show. And that was, to me, that just seemed like just awesome. Like you didn't miss a beat with any of the, with any fine tuning. And a lot of your crew, I know you work with some of them, but the crew itself, most of them were pretty new, I think, too, weren't they? So it's new to you as far as working together?
Let me make 3 points quickly. First,
sure,
the werewolf teeth should not have been sharp enough to cut Alyssa. Part of my discussions were that there were going to be some foam teeth that were like cut in half so that when they bit, it looked like they were sunk into the floor, and I never got that. There should never have been teeth that could scratch her. Second of all, Hope wasn't one of my ADs. She was my only AD. Just as I was the only AD on Frank Henenlotter's Brain Damage, she was the only AD on this film. It was an enclosed space with one holding room and some cars outside, so I knew she would be able to handle it. But also, she's directed her own feature, and she's been coming along, and she's worked on a couple of my films before, and has taken a larger role each time, and I'm very happy to have her take that key position, and she did a great job and had a great disposition, and everybody more or less has worked with each other in that crew, except for some of the volunteers.
Sure.
In terms of the crew, Chris Cosgrave was my same guy. He's been my visual effects guy on a bunch of films. He shot Guns of Eden. He's the guy that I can really count on for making sure what I want shows up on screen. I sometimes have complicated dolly moves in mind, and he'll think of how to adjust it in a way that makes it better. And I'm never like adamant, no, it's got to be my way, unless I know it has to be my way. In general, if he can make something better, I want to make it better. Hope was on Guns of Eden. Keith Lakowski, who's one of our co-producers, who had to step in and become production designer and build sets, because the production designer we had jumped on us 6 days before shooting with $500 of my money in his pocket. He had so much work. He was on Guns of Eden. Tamar's been on 4 or 5 of my movies now. So that core bunch had all been together. And Alex Frank, who was the camera operator you saw, he was a volunteer on Guns of Eden. And now he's a camera operator doing a great job.
Yeah, he was killing it.
That core group had all worked together before. And Adam Burke, who was doing sound, was new to me. I'd worked with him on a telethon that I ran for Unbelievable.
No kidding. Okay.
But otherwise, the effects guys have done some stop motion for me before, in both Johnny Gruesome and Widow's Point. And Valentina came in and did some blood for a couple of days. She had worked on Unbelievable. So they were mostly all people who've worked with me before. The volunteers, they're new. And I had a couple of interns who were getting college credit to be there. A couple of people were just being volunteers. Rotating force. Sometimes someone would show up for a day and not come back. For the most part, they all stuck it out to the end. Everyone knows how I like to do things. Everyone knows how Chris likes to do things. The reality is, a director is usually not running the set. The assistant director is running the set. But everyone knows that in reality, the director of photography is running the set. You can't do anything until the lights are ready.
Right.
The director of photography sets the pace, sets the tone. So between Chris, Hope, and myself, we all take credit, blame for things that didn't work.
Gotcha.
I've been doing it a while, Rick, so I know how to run a low budget set. And this one, fortunately, unlike Guns of Eden, where we were in woods, we had to go up hills, down hills, over here, over there. It was very manageable because it was all compressed.
Gosh, and I think Keith nailed down that whole set location for you too, I believe.
He worked so hard on this film.
Yeah,
very hard. He told me he's never worked it so hard on a film, and he worked on a bunch.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, I'm glad I'm seeing a lot of his dishes that he's making. So it sounds like he's enjoying the fruits of his labor and actually enjoying relaxing now and just kind of filling up on good food and relaxing. So, but yeah, he was always doing something on set. Everybody was.
My plan when we finished Guns of Eden and I saw how it was turning out and I knew how it ran when we shot was that if I took those 3 co-producers, Chris, Keith, and Tamar, and the 4 of us were the foundation for the next film, that was my goal. I knew we could make things happen. And we added a few other people, and Hope is like somebody I always want on my set. Alex is someone I always want on my set.
Yeah.
And so that was the goal. And I hope the next one, it'll be the same thing. I hope we'll all be back in the same key positions.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. It obviously worked really well. The location too is fantastic. It was neat because you're in this forest, and even though the road is just sort of, over there a little bit, it really felt like a place that you could just quite easily get lost in and, come across something you might not want to come across as well. So that was a great location for that.
It was great, and it was convenient because it was off a main road. People drive by that road all the time because there's a dump right there, and they don't know that if you follow that road, it's really a driveway that leads to this former Girl Scouts cabin.
Yeah,
which the town council had to approve us getting. So it was isolated, but it was really close if we needed to run out and get something. It was a 20-minute drive from my house, which was good. The location I had planned to shoot at for 4 or 5 years fell through at the last minute, and that was a 40-minute drive. So I'm glad it happened that way.
Yeah, it worked out really well. I'm sure there's a few surprise dog walkers that'll drive them back. There was a couple people that would walk their dogs back. They're probably not expecting to come across a big giant werewolf.
Yeah, it's a little park, and people aren't supposed to walk their dogs, but who's to stop them?
Yeah, exactly. So, and I got to ask you too. So this might be a little bit tough for you to answer, maybe not. But through the entire filming process, what would you say would be your favorite film that you got to? And maybe this might be 2 separate questions, because obviously I want to know what your favorite film that you got to shoot, where you're like, that's what I've been waiting for this entire shoot to film that film. It turned out perfectly. Versus maybe which scene you're most excited for people to watch, and the one you might take your face off at the screen at the premiere and looking around to see what people's reactions are.
So
that might be 2 questions. I don't know.
I imagine they're all the same thing. I'm seeing some scenes cut together already.
Okay.
The way our editing process works is Joe, the assistant editor, is syncing up all the footage of the movie, and then he's keeping the footage for the first half and editing the first half, and he's sending the synced in up footage to Aaron to edit the second half. Well, all the footage hasn't even been sent to him, so he's been syncing up, and he started cutting scenes while he's waiting for the rest of the footage to come in. So I've actually seen several scenes cut together, and there's a dinner time scene where the 6 characters are at the table, and the camera starts on 2 of them and pulls back, revealing them 2 at a time as they're having dialogue, and it's a money shot. It's perfect. And just that so much care went into a little dramatic scene, that has exposition, but isn't like one of the standout scenes, shows the attention that we put into a lot of it. And I just looked at that. I'm like, wow, that's the best shot that's ever been in any of my films right there. I haven't seen the rest, so I really can't say. I do know that, we have effects that worked and we have effects that didn't work. And we're going to have to cut around them, and then we're going to have to fill in the gaps and make sure we have effects that work in their place if they didn't.
Gotcha. And as far as
when this movie is done, we will have some amazing werewolf shots. I think what we got looks pretty good, but I haven't seen it all, so I don't know what it looks like yet.
Right. I mean, I was blown away by a couple of scenes, where it sort of take my eyes off of what was being filmed and look at the monitor that you had. I thought, wow, that just, kudos to, and apologize, Alex, right? The cameraman?
Camera off, yeah.
He was just the way that he filled those shots are just absolutely incredible. So I can't wait to see that on the big screen as well, because of course, once you have all the sound and everything else put into it. Have you had a chance? I don't know. I know Armand is composing all, if not most of the stuff, but he probably hasn't even started putting the music together yet.
He hasn't started. There's no point for him to start until he's got a rough cut. Maybe he'll come up with a few ideas.
Right.
When I have a rough cut, we sit there and we have a spotting session, and I give him my specific notes, and hopefully he remembers them. Sometimes he doesn't.
Yeah.
Because of our compressed schedule, he's got to get it right the first time.
Exactly. And it's kind of cool that he was on set through, at least I think pretty much all of it that I was there for, maybe throughout the whole film too. Because I know I had a chance to talk with him, and he was talking about how it's great for him to be able to see things played out as they're being filmed, so he can sort of get an idea of, what instruments, what sounds he kind of wants to put in there. And I think he was making some notes on that as well, mental or
that is his
otherwise.
Methodology, his technique. I'm not sure why he can't just get that from the screenplay that I write. He's always welcome to come to my set if it helps.
Yeah, I guess it's probably maybe just a nice thing to see the visual stuff as well, and imagine what kind of music would work well in his head as he's watching it. But I thought that was pretty unique that a composer would be there right on set watching it all too. I don't know if that happens too often.
Well, let's be clear. He's composer, but he's also executive producer. Kim is supervisor, but she's also an executive producer. And we have maybe 6 executive producers, people who put money into the film, people who have supported it for a long time. So they have a larger, I don't want to say stake, but a larger interest.
Sure. I think both is fair.
Film do well, turn out well.
Right.
And I know I know without question it's gonna be my best film. So
yeah. And it's funny because I know everybody who watches probably of course you're gonna say that, recency bias anybody, but truly there might be a couple of films of yours that I missed, but somebody that's covered, I think, about 5-year films, it really is awesome to see your progress as a filmmaker, because every film that you do after the other one really is the best film. It's really neat to see you grow that way. What goes into making the best film like that? Was it just something that you finally had the crew and the cast to do what you've wanted to do in other films? Is it the fact that you've just you've grown as yourself as a filmmaker? What do you think it is that is going to truly make this your best film yet, other than the fact that it is just a true scary horror movie that's got some fantastic dramatic moments in it?
Having the vision, which comes from having more experience, and surrounding myself with the right crew and the right cast. And I treat crew, I cast it like I do the cast. I want people who can work together, people who aren't overly dramatic, people who don't rub each other the wrong way. There's enough tension to deal with in the challenges of making a movie, which is all about problem solving without people getting on each other's nerves. So, that's all part of it. But I'm always driven to make the best film I can, but this one, I could clearly see what it would take to make it the best film, what camera moves we needed, what performances we needed, and how sometimes it comes together, sometimes it doesn't. This time it did.
Yeah, and it certainly is, you have that synchronicity, I think, as well, between just not everybody else working well together, but everybody else responding well to the expectations and the direction for them to do as well as they can. I know that was something I heard repeatedly from a lot of the cast members, was that they not only felt that they were on a big budget film, but they found that you were such a great director to work with as well, because again, they knew exactly what was expected of them. I could certainly tell there were certain scenes that maybe took more takes than you would have liked, that the frustration might have been mounting. I guess that probably happens no matter what, when it's 4:00 in the morning and you're filming an absolutely intense scene as well. That's yet diamonds are definitely made under pressure, and you were certainly keeping very calm demeanor throughout the entire process. And I've no doubt that really helped the actors and the crew to always do their best, because they were allowed to do their best. Your demeanor on set really helped them to be able to do that, knowing that they had that freedom, I suppose.
So I've been on a lot of sets where egos really play a role in making uncomfortable sets.
Yeah.
Where people are allowed to talk down to people, where the director's girlfriend is allowed to yell at people and berate people. It just creates an unpleasant atmosphere, and it's not conducive to creating. And it's just something that I don't put up with on my sets. There's always some tensions. We're basically, we come together and we're spending a lot of time with each other, a lot of time with each other for a short period of time. Everyone has their quirks and their breaking points. And
Sure.
producing and directing, one thing that they both have in common is you have to know how to juggle many different personalities, dispositions, recognize when someone's getting close, and you have to be able to, if not mollify that, at least work around it, work through it, recognize when someone maybe needs a little break. And that's something that I'm, at this stage of my life, I'm pretty good at. I mean, I have my own points where I'm getting frustrated. This shot is not working the way I want because this effect isn't working the way I wrote and discussed it. Now I have to reimagine how this bit is going to play, but that's going to affect how the next shot plays and the shot after that. And I have to have a big enough picture to be able to see that far ahead and think on my feet.
Right.
But everyone has their points and everyone works through them for the better of the project. They have to believe in the project. I believe everybody on this project believed in it.
Yeah, that's without a doubt. That was something that shone through absolutely everything. That everybody that I talked to, they were happy to be there. And I mean, you fed everybody well too. That was great. The food truck guy showed up. Even he was in a great mood. Friggin' what was it? 2:00 in the morning. I think the first night that I was there.
Western New York Food Carts, a sponsor of the film.
Make sure you plug that in because oh my god, that was good food. I think I took a couple of pictures. I was sending it to my other half just so she wasn't too worried about me. He's like, look, we're eating great out here in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by pack of wolves, but they're feeding us really well. So the wolves are gonna get their fill. I'll have to put a picture of the food there because even it doesn't do it justice, but it looked pretty good, tasted good. Yeah,
when we did our pickup day with the outhouse, we had 3 new volunteers and we only got pizza. And I didn't rub it in their faces by saying, we didn't eat pizza every night on this bill. But it was good pizza.
Yeah, right. So that was great. And you had lots of snacks, everything else to keep people hydrated and sugared up and energy. It was a very well-oiled machine. I like my own voice.
Well, you weren't there the day that Keith announced, we only have this many candy bars. So everybody can only have half a candy.
I was there.
Oh, so
that was on the Sunday.
Some sort of rebellion over in the sound department, maybe.
Yeah, there was actually. I remember that. Adam was his name, right? The sound guy, Adam Berg. And the poor guy was eating a whole chocolate bar, and he got such a hard time for that. Like, did you share that? He's like, I was told that we could have this. Like, yeah, by who? Who told you could have that whole chocolate bar?
Well, I just laughed when I heard about it.
Yeah, it was pretty funny. I remember that really well.
How much sugar and candy can people eat? We had one. Who ate a lot.
Apparently, it's a lot. Whatever it takes, right? Like you said, everybody has their own methods. So
we're done, and now I have to go on the post-shoot diet because I would have 2 helpings of that dinner every night. For sure.
Yeah.
And, you're killing time. There's nothing to do but snack.
Exactly. Snack or nap, one or the other. So as far as the distribution and when this film is going to be available for people, you mentioned that the distributor has a hard deadline. Does that mean that they also have a fairly hard deadline as far as when they want to distribute the film? When you think it's going to be ready for DVD or streaming or whatever's going to happen first?
So here's the process. We have to give them what's called deliverables, which is the movie in different formats and all the extras, the photos, blah, 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 that they need to create stuff. The films will go to a lab for what's called a QC, quality control, where they look for focus imperfections, audio imperfections, things that AI is judging, and some of those things you get a report back. Some of those things you have to fix. Some of those things you can say, no, this is a sound effect we added on purpose. It belongs there, and they accept it. Yeah. It has to go through that process before the distributor can set an actual date. I believe it's planned for September. Could be wrong. Okay. Maybe they try and get it out sooner. Distributor has some money in the film, so they want to make that money back as fast as possible.
Of course.
So we are under the gun to deliver a film much faster than I've ever had to before. So it's a good thing that I have the 2 editors going. And I actually shot the film in such a way, Chris and I worked this out, Chris Cosgrave. When you have that many characters, it's nice to have a camera move so you can have as much dialogue in one shot as possible and not have to do so many edits. And it just makes things easier in terms of the post-production. We'll see. Like I said, we have a lot of special effects still to shoot. Hopefully we get them done in a timely manner so it doesn't set us back at all. Sound editing takes an awful long time. The music takes an awful lot of time. I will tell Armand, I need this score by this date. And he will say that you'll have it by that date. And then he'll get a call from 10,000 Maniacs or whoever. Next thing you know, it's a month later. But we're all under pressure on this one to really get it done fast, which is tough when you're trying to do the best you've done, too.
Absolutely, yeah. That's going to be a tough, kind of a give and take or a, pull and push, I guess, sort of thing, too, where you want to, you're going to be giving people lots of taps on the shoulders, no doubt, but at the same time, you don't want them to rush through it for the sake of rushing through it. You want them to obviously make sure that they're got the time they need, but in a timely manner.
Rick, this is a miracle film. To have done a werewolf film with practical effects for, I don't know, 100, 110,000, whatever it is. So many things could have gone wrong that didn't. So many things did go wrong that we lost the editor early on. The production designer really fucked us over. Thank God the cast all stayed intact. Without going into detail, COVID finally caught up with us after being so careful on the last film, after delaying this film so that we wouldn't have to deal with COVID. It finally caused some delays in there.
Well, even Aaron, too, I think you said that you almost didn't get him as well, but something that he was working on was delayed, so he was able to make it. Is that correct?
I don't know anything about that.
Oh, okay.
You're spilling stuff I didn't know. As far as I know, he was committed and was always he never said anything to the contrary to me.
Gotcha. I probably think of a different, maybe another actor or something.
Nice try.
No kidding, right? So with that in mind, what is it you think people are going to be most excited about when they finally get to see this? And if we have to wait till September, October, I mean, that's not a bad month to have a werewolf movie.
It'll be in October, I guarantee it. Look, it's going to be all that matters if a film's engaging. Does it hold your attention? Does it involve you in the story? If you're noticing one performance is super strong, maybe that's not a good thing because that means another performance isn't strong. In this film, they're all strong. The performances are all there. The direction's there. The camera work's there. I had 2 guys doing camera work. It was Chris and Alex. The camera department should have at least 3 people. And then there's a whole other department called the grip and electric department that handles the lighting and the dollies. They were 2 guys. And they were doing all that other stuff. They were easily doing the work of 4 people, maybe 5. And they did an amazing job.
It was just ridiculous watching them work. It's like it really was like watching a magic show, going on. And, they'd get everything set. It was like, wait, hold on a second. They move a little light sort of in a certain way. They'd get a slightly different camera angle up. So they took what I thought looked okay. All of a sudden just looked absolutely amazing. And they did it quickly without really having to put much thought into it.
Yeah, and also, I mean, something you wouldn't know from being on set, but they were lighting things a certain way so that when Alex does the color grade under Chris's supervision, they will enhance certain colors. There will be color schemes. There's going to be a lot of, red lighting, blue lighting, a lot of creative lighting going on that they were lighting for, knowing that they were going to do certain things with it in post. So it's going to be a stylish film too.
That's incredible. And for people watching this, they probably think we're talking about a couple of, old school veterans that they must have decades of experience under their belts. But I think both of them are quite young. They're both 24, 25.
Alex is young, 24, 25. Chris is, a number of years younger than me.
Right. Us were thinking the sound guy and the camera guy specifically.
I'm
No
sure.
offense, Chris.
Sound is a separate thing. Sound is a
Yeah.
separate thing. Chris will appreciate that you said that before I corrected you.
100%, right? 100%. So no, it's fantastic, and it's good that you got him now, because I guess your concern is that he's going to go off to Hollywood and you'll never be able to have him on set again. That they're going to.
You got to start with me. He'll always remember me, hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, even Romero had to start, on what I think was Mr. Dress Up or something back when he was getting started. So
everyone has to start somewhere,
Yep.
And Alex started on Guns of Eden and had a much more creative and impactful role on this. So that's quite a jump from one film to the next. He did work on Slasher Days of Summer. He was director of photography on Hope's short film, Jade in the Brain, which was great. So there haven't been that many films come through since the pandemic. So he hasn't had that many opportunities to grow. He definitely grew on this film.
Right. Oh, that's right. Jane in the Brain. You posted a clip of that, I believe. And I had forgotten about that. That's
the crowdfunding teaser I shared, and we showed that at my festival, and it was amazing.
Yeah, it really was. It was
I directed that, and Alex shot and edited it.
Yeah, it's crazy to watch such a quiet scene like that, and meanwhile you're on the edge of your seat because it's so suspenseful the way that the camera kind of moved over everything the way that it did.
Rick, I'm not Roger Corman because I don't produce a lot of films that other people direct. Sam Qualiana's films I produced and he directed. But I am sort of an enabler, a mentor in that sense, in that people outgrow me. They join the union. They work for more money. They can't afford to work for me eventually. So I have to bring in a new bunch of young people. Chris and I are on the same page, and Keith, the three of us, as far as mentoring newbies, bringing them up. So seeing Hope and now Alex start out in one position on my films and work their way up to more important positions. Eventually they will, maybe they'll leave town, LA, New York, who knows. Eventually they'll outgrow this type of production. Hopefully I outgrow this kind of production.
Right.
Bigger things, but there are worse things in life than to bring people along and send them on their way to bigger and better careers, knowing that you've had some small part in their evolution and having to find new people to work with.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously that builds into your mentality as well, as you teach it as well. You teach film. So it's gotta be a real kick for you, I would think, too, to do a real full circle, that you've got the students in your classroom, but in a sense you've also got a lot of those students that are on set as well that are going to learn the practicality of it, that'll, like you said, eventually go on, and you know that you had a part in their career.
I'm now an elder statesman of film community.
Yeah.
And so there's no fighting that. I'm a 60-year-old guy working with many people in their 20s. Same thing with the cast.
Yeah.
Now Aaron's older than the 20-somethings, but still younger than me.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is. I was never quite the wonderkind. I was briefly for Slime City, maybe my second film, but you only get to hold that title for so long. Like Hope was in high school when she directed her first feature. She's not in high school now. It's time for her to do her next feature.
Right. Well, they might not be calling you the grandfather, the godfather of the horror genre, but
I'd rather be a godfather than a grandfather.
Exactly.
I know. Well, I'm sure you're the grandfather of gore or anything like that. Please, let's not let that happen.
Yeah, correct. Maybe the stepfather to a lot of people's careers. That
I'd like to think I've helped some people along, and I've given plenty of advice and tried to give recognition through my festival. And I believe in paying it forward. That is why I started teaching.
Yeah.
I love working with the students that I have. It's not that I have any interest in academia or going to whining cheese parties with the 100 different vice presidents and deans of the college or anything like that.
Right.
It's just a productive way of trying to pass some stuff on. Maybe it helps people, maybe it doesn't.
No, it's great. And that's very much appreciated, reciprocated. I'm sure that people take that and they'll pay it forward themselves. I mean, you've always been great too. Throughout all of it too. I mean, if you can help somebody out, you will. Heck, you even helped me out recently on an article where like, hey, I know a guy. Let me hook you up with that guy, and it made things a lot better. So,
well, people help me too. So it's a two-way street. Can't take help and not give help, right?
Exactly. Yeah, creative process is not a silo. It takes many people to build it.
Film is very different than novels. It's not just collaborative. There's an entire community that has to make a film. You know, the expression, it takes a village. It really takes a village to make a film. You can't do it alone.
No.
People try. I mean, some people can manage, but you have to have a very specific project for one person to direct and shoot and set up a microphone on a stand. And I know people who can do that with short films. It's hard with features, and especially something like this, that just the fact that we want it to be good, it takes people. And when you can only afford so many people, that means the people you have to work at least twice as hard. So there has to be real commitment to the project and to each other. And that's, it worked out well this time, just like it did last time.
Yeah, and I'm going to steal that segue on you a little bit too, because you mentioned you compared filmmaking to, to writing books as well. And I know that you did do a novelization for this film as one of your awesome perks.
There's a novelization in the works.
I was going to say, maybe we shouldn't talk about that.
We have to make the movie and then come on. I still owe a novelization for Guns of Eden, and I think the two of them are going to be combined into one volume.
Oh, that'd be cool. Now, is that going to be specific? I mean, I know it's done specifically for your, I don't know if you call them shareholders or your investors, your perk people.
Backers.
Okay. So your backers. So is that ever going to be something that'll be made public, maybe under a different reiteration as far as novelization goes?
Yeah, I mean, there may be an online version, Kindle, whatever. I'm not into that. Listen, Medallion Press went out of business around the time that ebooks became so prevalent. I never had any interest in finding another publisher. I had never had any interest in throwing these books up on Kindle, which I should do. I should get them all out there again.
Sure.
I like books, and I like having a publisher who pays me to write books and pays me royalties. I do know authors like Jeff Strand who have built up an online audience and can make this work for them by writing books. I don't want to keep writing books. I specifically wanted to do the Jake Hellman files. I wanted to do it as a 9-book series. They kind of pulled the rug out from me and said, you have to stop at number 6, tie stuff up, which I did. Reasonably satisfied with how it ended. But that is the series. And once I wasn't writing for that series, I really wasn't interested in continuing. I wrote the Final Frenzy book just to tie up loose ends. I wrote Black Creek. Frankly, I wrote that one just so I could have some money coming in. They wanted me to stop doing series and start doing self-contained books. So I said, okay, I'll do this one that I had in mind for a while. It turned out well. But I wasn't heartbroken when I wasn't able to, when they folded, because I don't know that they were going to keep hiring me to write books. I had done all I could do with Jake Hellman. I did have, for a while, I did have the TV interest in that, and maybe it could have taken off, even though it didn't. I got all the rights to those books back. But I did what I wanted to do as an author, and I've never had a story I was burning to tell in that form again. So it's pretty much concentrating on film now. I'm doing these novelizations sort of as a lark. At some point, I'll be too old to do film, and maybe then I'll try books again. But
yeah, no, totally got that. And I know you mentioned Carnage Road. I thought that was one that you were planning on filming with Craig Sheffer, and then of course things changed with the with SOG and everything else.
He had all kinds of ideas that under that situation I had to give him what he wanted. He turned it into an alternate version. There were all sorts of changes.
Okay.
As a movie, as a TV show, this pilot, that pilot. He couldn't get it off the ground. Every once in a while he comes back to me and says, hey, can you dig up one of those scripts? I'm happy to. I would still love to do it. But I will tell you, after my experiences on this film and seeing how long the practical effects take, doing a motorcycle picture with a lot of zombies and a lot of practical zombie makeups, I can't do it for a couple of $100,000. If I were to do it for $500,000, it would still have to be with non-SAG actors. To do that movie with SAG actors, it's like a $3 million film. So unless I do a very stripped down version, which I could end up doing someday, probably not going to happen.
Gotcha. What do you think you're going to work on next? Do you have anything planned, or is it all just about getting this film?
You never know what might come along. You never know if the distributor says, hey, I've done pre-sales for this film really well. How about a sequel? That could come along. I'm actually writing a vigilante script next. So the next one will be back to action instead of horror, but it will be, city action, urban action, not out in the woods action like we did on the last one. Sort of a Death Wish / Taxi Driver type film, as opposed to this film where the focus was really on a diverse group of young people. This would be a bunch of older guys.
Okay.
Or sort of a VFW type thing.
Gotcha.
So that's where the passion is right now. I think that'll be the next one, but who knows? Who knows?
Sure. Like you said, I mean, you never know who's going to knock on your door next.
I expect to be finished with that script by the end of the year. While we're doing editing, that's what I'll be doing creatively while the editors are editing, and making that script as good as I could. I have an actor in mind for a lead for that already, and we'll see who's interested in putting some money in. I'd like to shoot that in the fall, not in the summer, maybe in late summer or fall. We'll see. I've never had that, Rick, where I've gotten to do a movie one year and then do another movie the next year. And I would love to make that happen. And
you mentioned too, because you're talking about maybe hopefully working on this one in the fall time, and I imagine, of course, that's also when you're hoping that Frenzy Moon is going to be out. Now, are you hoping to have it go through any sort of a festival circuit at all beforehand? It doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of time for that.
There isn't. The great thing about having a distributor put money into the film, in addition to the crowdfunding money and in addition to some investors, those three sources, is they need to get it out there right away. There is no festival tour. I've told him, I think this is really good. I think it should have a shot at this festival. Like I'll get my number of screenings, a certain limited number, but not a full run. That's the sacrifice.
Sure.
For me, it's a small sacrifice. Obviously I love film festivals. I put a lot of work into my own. Of course. And I would like to see this one play at a good genre festival. I have one in mind. We'll see how it all comes together.
Yeah, exactly. Now, is that what you have in mind as far as a genre festival that you've got up that you're thinking about? Is that more for a premiere, or do you have because I would imagine you'll do a premiere for the film before it hits.
Well, you have to have a festival premiere, and the more prestigious ones require the world premiere. That's the way it works.
Gotcha.
So I would have to do the world premiere, and then I would do a local Buffalo premiere, which will fulfill a lot of the obligations for a lot of the crowdfunders, a lot of the backers that are invited to come to a local premiere. Okay. And I want the cast and crew to be able to see it anyways.
Gotcha. I mean, we do pretty good festivals up here in Ontario. I think there's one up in Toronto.
I know better than to submit to that one in Toronto because they never choose me. Never. I know another one that I am more interested in. I came close with one of them. So maybe I'd have a better shot with that one.
Okay. All right. Well, if there's anything I can do as a fellow Canadian to put a good word in for me.
I doubt it. I doubt there is, unless you're sitting on a selection committee.
No. No. Sorry. So that's out the window. But so I guess to wrap everything up then, thanks a lot for all the time, of course, as always, Greg. What is the big thing that you want to leave people understanding about Frenzy Moon and the reason they absolutely have to go and see this one, and why this is not going to be just another average independent film that they're going to see? Now, there's anything wrong with those, but
quality is definitely there in terms of the acting. I hope the writing, and in terms of the camera work, it's going to be a short film. It's going to be 90 minutes or 85 minutes, like most of mine are, and it's going to be worth your time. And most likely it's going to come to you by way of streaming of some sort. So it's not like you have to go out to the theater. If you have the chance to see it at a film festival, worth your time as well. But I just think it's going to be a really good film.
Good. Well, I'm looking forward to it. It was scary as hell watching it unfold on set. I can imagine how scary it's going to be with all the effects and everything edited with all the other sequence in there too. So I absolutely cannot wait to see this. September needs to hurry up.
Very good.
Awesome.
Thanks for coming to set. It was good to have you out there for 2 nights. It was exciting racing you to the bus station and then hearing that your phone, had been recovered after you told me you had lost it. And you told me it was on a table, and it wasn't even where you said it was.
Wasn't that funny? Yeah. I know, I couldn't believe it. When Sal told me that, it was And here I am sitting. I'm like, geez, hopefully I get Wi-Fi. I can let the other half know that I'm on the way, that I wasn't, killed on set or something like that out in the woods. And next, the bus driver came up. He's like, excuse me, sir, is this yours? And my phone was there. And I'm like,
Oh, the bus driver? You were already on the bus?
yeah, I was already sitting outside on the bus. I'm just waiting to roll out. So, I mean, at that point, like, there's zero hope for this phone. I figured,
So Salvatore had to park his little motorcycle somewhere. There's no parking at that bus station. Run in and get you that phone. Give that phone to somebody so they would pass it on to you.
Oh, it was amazing. So we were sat there, and I saw him out there, and I'm like, well, I'm not just going to sit on the bus here. I got to go out. So, I mean, the bus driver can wait a minute. So I went out there and had a chance to shake his hand and thank him, and he assured me, he's like, we found your phone. It was in Keith's truck, I guess. It must have fallen in my pocket or something. He's like, I went for like a bat of the hell on that motorcycle here. And I'm just thinking, thank God it's 5 o'clock in the morning or whatever time it was. 6, I guess, would have been no traffic or light traffic. And he made it. And that was just, he was my hero today for that.
I believe it. When I dropped you off at the station, you had missed your phone, and we were going to have to worry about getting it to you. By the time I got back exhausted, and I'm checking in with those guys because they're still packing up.
Yeah.
Because I dropped you off, I didn't have to go back to that location. I got to go home. And
God, you're right.
Oh, yeah, well, Sal already dropped the phone off. I'm like, what?
Yeah, that's crazy.
The commitment shown by all the casting.
Exactly. They don't miss a beat, whether it's on set between takes or chasing a foreigner down so he can get his damn phone back. They're on the ball. Awesome. Well, yeah, thank you for everything, Greg. I can't wait to see this, and hopefully I get a chance to do that again because that was awesome. It's, you cover so many films and you think you've got a pretty good idea what goes into them, but then seeing it firsthand, it's whole other world, whole other level of understanding. So it was really cool to see that.
Well, I'm glad you came out for this one in particular because I remember from way back when you are a Werewolf fan. I knew this was up
100%. Yeah,
and it was not planned that you would be there when I had to just totally reconfigure a major sequence on my feet and come up with a whole different plan for how it had to be shot. It just happened to work out that way.
Yeah, and I thought you did all that for me. So but my gratitude is still there. So thank you. I'm glad it worked out. The magic of movie, whether it's intentional or not.
Right.
So awesome. Well, yeah, thanks again, and we'll definitely get chatting with you pretty soon.
Excellent to have you. Oh, let's not forget, you have a cameo in the film.
That's right. That's right. See, I didn't want to put the shine. We didn't even talk about that. I didn't want to put the shine on me because this was all about you and your film. But no, that was super cool getting to be a cameo of the film as well. I think the people that were part of that scene that had the talking parts, they were backers, I believe.
So different circumstances for each person. One was a backer. Some were locals who've helped me, who are associate producers.
Okay.
One was a guy who I just know loves Werewolf, so it was a mixture.
Yeah. Gotcha. And I'm brain farting on the name because I only had a chance to have a minor interaction with them. But the man that gave the money phrase, it's frenzy time. What an awesome experience that was to watch that guy. Holy crap. I mean, Kim set the stage as far as like helping people to get into the characters they needed to be. But this guy went from needing about 100 takes of rehearsal to get it right. And when it was finally on, like just absolutely nailed it. At least that's how it looked for me. I was standing behind him, but I'm like, it gave me chills, not because it was cool. It was pretty awesome to watch. It was a cool evolution.
That was a very cool scene because Chris had a set way that he wanted to shoot that with the moonlight and the fog and dollying past all you guys. And originally they were setting it. It was a case where instead of me having a plan and him making it better, he had a plan. And I don't know if I made it better, but I had to have the actors facing a different way than they planned. And visually, it looked very cool. And everyone got their little moment in there. And that was a scene that wasn't in the script originally. That was added just because I had this proposal and I was like, I want to show what some of these people are before they become werewolves. It won't break up with a film too much to add this little bit, and I think it could enhance it, and it looked very cool.
Yeah, it was really cool it was definitely cool having a cameo in it and just seeing all that were essentially I hope I'm not speaking out of line, maybe some of them had some acting experience, but it came across that they're all pretty much non-actors that were called in to do this, had this cool opportunity to be a part of that one scene, and they just nailed it.
No, a couple of them are actors.
Oh,
Eugene Beaufort is
right, yeah, right. Eugene,
he's done a bunch of stuff lately.
yeah,
And Sherry Fairchild and Frank were both in Guns of Eden and were really good in that. So of different levels, but the type of scene where it won't hurt the film if they're a non-actor, because it's just a couple of lines, a couple of meaty lines.
Yeah, I know it flowed really well. It's kind of neat. It goes to show when people are under pressure, they deliver under the right circumstance. So can't wait. And then probably the best part about that scene is I didn't have to wear contacts either, which was nice.
Right. Well, I found the contacts finally. They were in my back seat. 7 pairs.
It happens to the best of us, apparently.
It'd be digitally enhanced by Chris Cosgrave.
Cool. Well, at least Sal didn't have to risk his life trying to get them back to you. So
look at it. 99 minutes. 89 minutes. Perfect length for a film.
exactly, that's what I was going for.
All right, Rick. Thank you.
Thank you.